The rain hit the pavement in cold, relentless waves as Clara Hayes stumbled out of St. Mary's Hospital, her scrubs still damp with sweat from a 12-hour shift that felt more like 20. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled her coat tighter, not from the cold, but from exhaustion that had settled deep into her bones. Another night of saving lives while her own felt like it was barely holding together. She was halfway down Birch Avenue when she saw him. A man, crumpled against a lamppost like discarded paper, rain pooling around his body. Clara's heart slammed against her ribs. She dropped her bag and ran, her sneakers splashing through puddles as she reached him. "Sir? Sir, can you hear me?" Her fingers pressed against his neck, searching for a pulse. There. Weak. Fading. No time to think. No time to call for help first. Clara's training kicked in like muscle memory. She tilted his head back, checked his airway, and began compressions. 1, 2, 3. The rain soaked through her coat, through her scrubs, but she didn't stop. 15 compressions. 2 breaths. His chest rose and fell under her efforts, but he remained unconscious. "Come on," she whispered fiercely. "Come on, don't you dare give up." 30 more compressions. Her arms burned. 2 more breaths. And then he gasped, a violent, beautiful sound that meant life was returning to his body. His eyes fluttered open, confused and unfocused, staring up at her through the rain. What happened?" "You collapsed," Clara said, her voice gentle despite her racing heart. "Just stay still. Help is coming." She could hear sirens in the distance now. The man tried to sit up, but she pressed a hand to his shoulder. "Easy. You're safe." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression made her heart skip. "You saved my life." "Just doing what anyone would do," Clara said softly. "Not anyone," he rasped. "Thank you." The ambulance pulled up moments later, red and blue lights painting the wet street in urgent colors. Clara stepped back as the paramedics took over, answering their rapid-fire questions with clinical precision. She watched them load him onto the stretcher, watched the ambulance doors close. And then she picked up her soaked bag and walked home through the rain, never asking his name, never knowing that in those few minutes on a cold Portland street, she had changed everything. 3 days later, Ethan Ward sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor of the Novatech Tower, staring out at the city below. His doctors had cleared him, called it a combination of exhaustion and dehydration that triggered a cardiac event. "Take it easy," they said. "Rest." As if a man who built an empire on 18-hour days knew how to rest. But he couldn't stop thinking about her. The woman with tired eyes and steady hands. The woman who knelt in the rain and fought death itself to bring him back. He didn't even know her name. "Find her," he told his assistant, Marcus, that afternoon. "The nurse who helped me that night on Birch Avenue. I need to thank her properly." Marcus nodded, already making notes. "I'll start with the hospital. St. Mary's is the closest to where you were found." It took 4 days of careful inquiries, but Marcus finally came back with a name. "Clara Hayes. I'm 29 years old. Trauma nurse. Single. Lived in a modest apartment in northeast Portland." Ethan stared at the file, his finger tracing the edge of her hospital ID photo. She looked tired even in the picture, but there was something in her eyes. Kindness. Real, unfiltered kindness. He had to see her again. Clara was restocking supplies in the ER when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Miss Hayes." She turned, and her breath caught. The man from the street stood there, but transformed. He was clean-shaven now, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But his eyes were the same, that same intensity that had looked up at her through the rain. "Do I know you?" she asked carefully. "You saved my life last week," he said with a slight smile. "On Birch Avenue. I'm Ethan." Recognition flickered across her face. "Oh, you're okay. That's good. More than okay, thanks to you." He took a step closer. "I came to thank you properly. Maybe I could buy you coffee? Dinner?" Clara hesitated, wiping her hands on her scrubs. He looked important, successful, probably had a life completely different from hers. "I don't know. Please," Ethan said, and there was something vulnerable in the word. "Just coffee. 1 hour." She found herself nodding. "Okay, coffee." Their first meeting at a small cafe near the hospital turned into 2 hours of conversation that felt like 20 minutes. Ethan asked about her work, her life, her dreams, and listened like every word mattered. Clara found herself talking about things she rarely shared, about the burnout that sometimes threatened to overwhelm her love for nursing, about the painting she did in her spare time to decompress. You paint. Ethan's eyes lit up. What kind of paintings? Small landscapes mostly, Clara said, a little embarrassed. Nothing special. Just something that helps me unwind. I used to paint, Ethan admitted quietly. Years ago. What made you stop? He was silent for a moment, his coffee cup turning slowly between his hands. My wife passed away 5 years ago. Cancer. She loved watching me paint. After she was gone, I couldn't pick up a brush without seeing her smile, hearing her voice. It hurt too much. Clara reached across the table and touched his hand, just briefly. I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly hard. It was. Still is, some days. He looked up at her. What about you? Is there someone in your life? Not anymore, Clara said. I was engaged once. He was brilliant, ambitious, always chasing the next big opportunity. Turns out I wasn't given enough of an opportunity to chase. He chose a job in New York over our life together. Then he was an idiot, Ethan said simply, and the conviction in his voice made her smile despite herself. They met again 2 days later for a walk along the Willamette River, and then again at an art gallery, and again at a quiet bookstore cafe where they sat for hours, talking about everything and nothing. Ethan never mentioned Novatech, never dropped hints about his wealth or status. He was just Ethan, the man who laughed at her terrible puns and listened intently when she talked about her patients. You really care about them, he observed one afternoon as they walked through Riverside Park. Every story you tell, you remember their names, their families, what mattered to them. They trust me with their lives, Clara said. The least I can do is see them as people, not just medical cases. Ethan stopped walking and turned to face her. You're remarkable. You know that. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. I'm just doing my job. No, he said softly. You're doing so much more than that. You give pieces of yourself to everyone you meet. That's rare. She didn't know what to say to that, so she just smiled, and they kept walking, their hands brushing occasionally, neither of them pulling away. 3 weeks into their growing friendship, Clara mentioned wanting to paint by the river on her next day off. Ethan showed up with a second easel and paint supplies. You said you stopped painting, Clara said, surprised. Maybe it's time I started again, Ethan replied. If you'll have me. They painted side by side in comfortable silence, broken occasionally by gentle critiques and shared laughter. Clara noticed how naturally Ethan handled the brush, how his strokes were confident despite years away from the canvas. You're really good at this, she said, leaning over to look at his work. He was painting the bridge across the river, but with unexpected bursts of color that made it feel alive. I had forgotten how much I missed it, Ethan admitted. Thank you for reminding me. You don't have to thank me for everything, Clara said with a laugh. Yes, I do. He set down his brush and looked at her seriously. You've given me something I didn't know I'd lost. Hope, joy, the ability to see beauty in simple moments again. Clara felt something shift between them, something unspoken but profound. Ethan, Her phone buzzed insistently. She pulled it out, frowning at the screen. Her friend Rachel was calling. Sorry, I should take this. Clara. Rachel's voice was practically shouting through the phone. Why didn't you tell me you've been hanging out with Ethan Ward? Clara's heart dropped. What? Ethan Ward. The billionaire. The guy who founded Novatech. I just saw him on the news, and I swear it's the same guy from your Instagram story at the gallery last week. Clara, he's worth like $3 billion. The phone nearly slipped from Clara's hand. She turned slowly to look at Ethan, who had gone very still, his brush frozen mid-stroke. Is it true? She asked quietly, ending the call. Ethan set down his brush carefully. Clara, I can explain. Are you Ethan Ward? Ethan Ward. Yes. The word fell between them like a stone. Clara took a step back, her easel wobbling. You lied to me. I didn't lie. Ethan reached for her, but she moved away. I didn't tell you because I wanted you to know me. Just me. Not the money, not the company, not the headlines. Just the person. You think I care about your money? Clara's voice cracked with hurt. You think I'm so shallow that you had to hide who you are? No, that's not what I meant. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration and guilt warring on his face. Most people, when they find out who I am, they change. They see dollar signs instead of a person. I didn't want that with you. What we have, it's real. It's the first real thing I've had in years. What do we have? Clara laughed bitterly. We have lies, Ethan. You made me think you were someone you're not. I am exactly who I've been with you, Ethan said desperately. Money doesn't define me. The company doesn't define me. This, he gestured between them. This is who I really am. Tears blurred Clara's vision. You know what hurts the most? I thought you trusted me. I thought what we were building meant something. But you didn't trust me enough to be honest. Clara, please. I need to go. She started packing up her painting supplies with shaking hands. Can we talk about this? Please. I need time to think, Clara said, not looking at him. I need to process this. All of it. She left him standing there by the river, his unfinished painting fluttering in the breeze, and walked away with her heart breaking for the second time in her life. The next 3 weeks were torture. Clara threw herself into work, picking up extra shifts until her supervisor forced her to take days off. She painted at home, angry slashes of color that reflected her turbulent emotions. She cried in the shower, in her car, in the quiet moments before sleep came. Ethan fared no better. Marcus found him at the office at 3 in the morning more than once, staring at spreadsheets without seeing them. The board noticed his distraction. The company's stock wavered. But Ethan couldn't focus on any of it. He'd found something precious and real, and he'd lost it through his own cowardice. On a Tuesday morning, for weeks after their fight, Clara arrived at the hospital to find a large wrapped canvas waiting at the nurse's station. Someone dropped this off for you, her colleague said with raised eyebrows. Must be a secret admirer. Clara's hands trembled as she unwrapped it. The painting showed a woman kneeling on a rain-soaked street, her hands pressed against a man's chest, light breaking through storm clouds above them. The detail was breathtaking. Every raindrop, every shadow, every ounce of determination in the woman's face was captured with stunning clarity. On the back, in careful handwriting, you reminded me what it means to live, to hope, to paint what I've found instead of mourning what I've lost. Thank you for saving my life twice. Once on Birch Avenue, and once every day since. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to trust you with my truth. You deserve better. You deserve everything. Below the note was an address. The Riverside Gallery. An exhibit opening that Friday. Clara stood there, tears streaming down her face, staring at the painting for a long time. Then she pulled out her phone and texted Rachel. I need to borrow your black dress. The gallery was intimate, just 20 paintings displayed in a renovated warehouse with exposed brick and soft lighting. Clara arrived an hour after the opening started, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. The space was moderately crowded with art enthusiasts and critics, but she only had eyes for the paintings. They were all about healing. A doctor sutures a wound with gentle hands. A teacher kneeling beside a struggling student. A stranger helping an elderly person cross the street. Firefighters carrying a child from a burning building. And in the center of them all, the painting of the nurse in the rain. It's called The First Light, a voice said behind her. Clara turned to find Ethan standing there, looking nervous in a way she'd never seen him before. He wore a simple black shirt and jeans, paint stains still visible on his hands. You're still painting, she said softly. Because of you, Ethan replied. Every single one of these paintings exists because you showed me that the most valuable thing in the world isn't money or success or power. It's kind. It's a human connection. It's choosing to stop and help when everyone else walks by. Clara stepped closer to him. Why didn't you just tell me? From the beginning? Because I was afraid, Ethan admitted. My wife loved me before the money, before Novatech became what it is. After she died, I dated a few times. Every single woman saw the dollar signs first and the person second, if at all. When you looked at me on that street, when you fought to save my life, you didn't see a billionaire. You saw a human being who needed help. I was terrified that if you knew, that would change. You should have trusted me, Clara said, but her voice was gentler now. I know, and I'm sorry. I let my fear make me a coward. Ethan took a breath. Clara, I'm not asking you to forget what happened. I'm not asking you to ignore that I kept something important from you. I'm just asking for a chance to start over. Honestly this time. No secrets. No walls. Just me. All of me, if you'll have me. Clara looked at the painting again. At the nurse who wouldn't give up, who kept fighting when everything seemed hopeless. You know what my patients teach me every day? That healing isn't about erasing the wounds. It's about learning to live with the scars, to grow around them, to let them make you stronger instead of broken. I want to heal, Ethan said quietly. With you. Then we heal together, Clara said, and reached for his hand. But Ethan? No more secrets. Ever. No more secrets, he promised. I swear. Before you click away, let me know in the comments what you think about Clara's decision to give Ethan another chance. And if you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Trust me, you'll want to see where this goes. A year later, Clara stood on the balcony of the Ward Hayes Initiative building, looking out at the Portland skyline as the sun painted the city in shades of gold and rose. Behind her, through the glass walls, she could see the bustling activity of their new foundation, volunteers and staff working to provide free healthcare to families who couldn't afford it otherwise. Ethan joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. Thinking about how we got here? Every day, Clara said, leaning back against him. She held up her left hand, the simple diamond ring catching the fading light. One decision to stop, one choice to help, and look what it led to. It led to everything. Ethan said, pressing a kiss to her temple. You know, the hospital called today. They want to name the new trauma wing after you. Absolutely not, Clara said immediately. We can fund it, but my name doesn't go on buildings. Ethan laughed. I told them you'd say that. So I proposed a compromise. The Clara Hayes Wing for Compassionate Care. And before you argue, it's already decided. The board voted unanimously. Clara turned in his arms, ready to protest, but the look on his face stopped her. Pride, love, gratitude, all of it shining in his eyes as he looked at her. You're impossible, she said instead. You love it, he countered. I love you, Clara corrected, and kissed him as the Portland sunset blazed behind them. In the end, kindness had found its way back, multiplied 1,000 times over. One nurse who stopped when others walked by, one man who learned to open his heart again, and thousands of lives touched by the foundation they built together, proof that a single moment of compassion could ripple outward forever. Clara still worked 2 shifts a week at St. Mary's, unable to fully step away from the work that defined her. Ethan painted every weekend without fail, his canvases now filled with color and hope instead of grief. They donated 70% of his fortune to causes they believed in, traveled when they could, and lived simply despite the wealth at their fingertips. Do you ever regret it? Clara asked one quiet Sunday morning as they painted side by side in their home studio. Choosing this life with me instead of the penthouse and the parties? Ethan set down his brush and pulled her close. I was dying in that life, Clara. Slowly, painfully, without even realizing it. You didn't just save my life that night on Birch Avenue. You gave me a reason to live it. So no, I've never regretted a single second. Good, Clara said, smiling against his chest. Because you're stuck with me now. Best fate I could imagine, Ethan murmured, and they stayed like that, wrapped in each other, as morning light filled the studio and the city hummed with life around them. If this story touched your heart, show some love by hitting that like button and sharing it with someone who needs to hear this message today. And drop a comment telling me about a time someone's kindness changed your life. I read every single one, and who knows, your story might inspire the next video. Until next time, remember that the smallest acts of kindness can create the biggest miracles.